Hi, everybody. Welcome to Minor Lighthouse. This is the summer edition, which is based on wisdom. And we're glad to have you here. And it's an exciting day because we have our first guest on our YouTube recording, Dan Choe, who I'm going to introduce a little bit later. Today, wisdom, when you look at my compasses, and today we're going to be looking at two compasses, the regular spiritual mapping compass, which you've seen before. And when you look at the top of it, the ordinal is wisdom. And the source question for wisdom is, what do I desire? What do I desire? And it's basically focused on curiosity. The other compass I use when I'm focusing on myself. It's the self-awareness compass. It's an acceptance compass. And again, when you hone in on the wisdom portion of this compass, it actually says self-perception. So this is where we start. This is the first step of wisdom. The motto for summer is let it glow. And that's based upon us being the flowers in the world, letting your gifts and your talents and sharing those with the world and being confident in who you are. So before going further, I'd like to ground us all, including my production staff behind the scenes. I'd like you to close your eyes and we're going to do another cleansing breath. And remember, when you take a cleansing breath, you breathe in through your nose, you hold a beat, and you breathe very slowly out of your mouth, like you're breathing, you're blowing out a birthday candle on your birthday cake. Man, it always feels good. And I want you to listen to the sounds in the room that you're in. If you're outside, even better. And let your consciousness drop into your body. And I want you to go into your heart space, and I want you to imagine that your heart is breathing for your body. And I want you also to give thanks for your lungs during time of COVID, for all your lungs do. And I'm going to say aloud a mantra. This is the mantra that's on my website that allows you to connect to spirit. My heart holds the keys to my desires, my truth, and my connection. My heart holds the keys to my desires, my truth, and my connection. May it be so. Oh, I'm hearing a little applause from all the guides and masters that are joining us. Take your time and come back. When you're ready, open your eyes again. So desires. So today is about desires. And I did not learn until the last 6 months that desires are about really the priorities in our life, which is a unique way to look at desires. Wisdom is not as much about intellect. It's really about connecting with the heart and being present in life. So the first thing I'd like to share is the time I spent with Thoth. So Thoth and Athena, his consort, are an Egyptian god and goddess that have never been human. They are credited with being the inventors of writing and the alphabet. They are powerful healers. They help direct one of my coworkers in alchemical healing, really powerful people. I think because they were never human, they are my hardest guide to understand. I meet with them on Sundays. They are my longest meditations. They go usually from an hour and a half. And what happens is in my meditation, I go into 3 chambers. And the first chamber is dark, and we're just silent and we talk about the topic. It might be a challenge I'm having in my life. It might be a challenge in the events of the day. And we concentrate on that topic. And then we go out into the light and they take me down 2 chambers. And one is a chamber that's called order. And the other chamber is about disorder. And the point of talking about the 2 sides of things is that they're trying to get me out of looking at things in a dualistic term. There's wisdom to be gained both from order and from disorder. And there's not a negative or positive to either one of them. It's just a way of looking at life from 2 different lenses. So that's the way to look at perception. So I'm going to read from this document because it's kind of long, and it's my time in meditation with Thoth. And this was very recent. In our meditation together, Thoth took me back to a trip I made over 10 years ago to the Hecata Lighthouse in Oregon, about an hour outside of Newport on the coast. You can read about this trip in detail in my early blog entry called Hecata Lighthouse on the My Inner Lighthouse website, myinnerlighthouse.com. Thoth and I are walking behind a younger version of myself as I make the climb up the hill from the lodging to the lighthouse grounds. Sally, tell me your thoughts about perception and what you believe is the best way to expand your perception. Thoth, very good. Perception is about creation. Great, I think. I'm already lost. Thoth finger wags me to stop my negative spiraling. How you perceive is fundamental in creating your world, your life. He expands his hands across the path we are walking upon. It is the first step to wisdom. This is why it is a focus of your awareness compass. This work is about internal transformation, not external. That's why we brought you here to Hecata. It's a perfect place to illustrate the point you are trying to get across to your audience. This trip was the beginning of your internal transformation. When we see humans from our vantage point, those who haven't served to expand your horizons, their internal world. Let me say that again. When we see you humans from our vantage point, those who haven't strived to expand their horizons, their internal world, they look much different than the ones who do. I would compare it to the difference between watching color and black and white television in your world. There's just a different vibrancy in your energy. I'd like to share 3 things about perception. The first is the concept of the test. Each person is tested or goes through a trial of some sort, sometimes many of them. How many tends to be related to your karma, which I'm not going to get into. This is part of being human. You agreed to this difficulty prior to your incarnation. You should be rocked, shocked, and tumbled. These are the learning experiences. These are the forks in the road. He finger wags again. Because of free will, you have the ability to respond to the demands of the moment in countless ways. But in general, it tends to be a choice between expansion or retreat. Sometimes this experience is based upon a lesson you passed up earlier in your life or even a prior lifetime. You shouldn't go there, but your soul always wants to expand itself in some ways, and it is being revealed to you in the current situation. We stop to look at me as I'm gaining the courage to climb up the wall of the lighthouse with the help of some nearby rocks. When I climb up the rocks and then the lighthouse to reach the 6-inch perimeter ledge, I'm going to turn around, lean my back weight against the lighthouse, drop my cane, and continue feeling my way around the entire lighthouse ledge, which is about 7 feet off the ground. I'm beginning to sweat just looking up at myself. Thoth continues, but I keep my eye on myself, climbing and turning around. This brings me to the second point. Do you see what you're doing here? I look at myself as I brace, turn around, and adjust my feet for better traction on the ledge. I'm mouthing something. I have no idea. Am I praying in sheer desperation? My eyes are so tightly closed. I'm as white as a bedsheet. Thoth, help me. You're saying, help me. Thoth begins to pace around in his spot, completely frustrated. I continue to support myself by affixing my gaze to the scene in front of me. Sally, that's what we're all waiting for. It amazes me how much you humans fail to just ask for help when the times get tough. Thoth extends his right arm with his pointing up at me and with equal certitude says, this is the moment we granted you all your clair abilities. You asked for help, and this was the moment we granted it to you in spades. Together, we silently watch me finish the walk and eventually jump off the ledge to the safety of terra firma. After landing on the ground, I stay for a while in the same spot, my head facing down. Yep, that has all the markings of prayer right there. Thoth puts his arm around me and turns me around to walk back down the hill. Thoth. The third point is the concept of blocks or obstacles in your life. I want to be clear on this because you've talked about this before, but frankly, nobody's listening to you. At this point, I look upwards at him, even though we're walking downhill, because yeah, Thoth just turned into the actor Stanley Tucci. Okay, now we're taking a break. So when I do these meditations, I am, lying on my meditation mat. I'm doing my best to remember this important conversation. And then I get off the mat and I sit on a nearby couch and I continue channeling and I write and I channel and I look up and I write and I channel and I look up. Well, this time I'm looking at this book, which my husband, Mike, is reading, which is Stanley Tucci's book called Taste. So I look up and I go like full glaze to like be able to hear, because clairaudience is my best clear ability. And I was looking at Stanley Tucci without even realizing it. So I'm just saying this is why Thoth turned into Stanley Tucci. Stanley, when you are presented a problem in life, it is there for a reason. You are not to avoid, deny, ride around, bury, or bypass it. No. That is a fool's errand. It is your teacher. You've said this before, that blocks become the bridges with awareness, but no one's listening to you. So maybe they'll listen to me, Sally. People generally listen to Stanley Tucci. He's a good actor. He's one of my favorites. Stanley, what goes around comes around. What goes around comes around. Do you understand what I'm saying? Stanley takes his arm off my shoulder. Now, back to your original question about the best way to expand your perception. I want you to wander. Wander. Yes, wander. Get off the path. Get curious. Follow your desires and dreams. See where they take you. Get uncomfortable. It is there when someone bothers you. Why are they bothering you? Why don't you understand? Find out why. Question. That is your psyche hungry to learn more. He starts hitting my noggin like this. Talk to them. Hear what their world is like. Your judgment will surrender as your perception opens. And then he does one of these. That's what we'd like you to do. That's what we'd like all of you to do. Surrender the fear, find the wonder. Do you remember hearing that voice back at Hecata? That was me. Wander, wonder, the rest will come. Thanks, Thoth. You are much easier to understand when you look and talk like Stanley Tucci. Thoth teasingly pushes me down the hill. So that's the great wisdom from Thoth and his recommendations. And now I would like to bring in our special guest, My friend Dan Choe from Modo News is going to jump on here and talk with us. And before Dan jumps into the wonderful work he's doing in our world, I want to frame this by something that Gandhi shared with me this week in meditation. And, you know, his nuggets are always priceless. This was just yesterday. The purpose of the media and reporting is to inform the public of what is happening. The more people can listen to what they are learning with an open awareness, the more they can be a productive citizen on behalf of themselves and their community. This is not a practice of us versus them. This is an activity that promotes neutrality and the need to find commonality in the human experience. So without further ado, I bring online here Dan Choe with Modo News. Dan's here with us. And Dan, welcome to My Inner Lighthouse.
Thanks for having me, Sally. Thanks for having me on My Inner Lighthouse. A little bit about myself is that I've worked in video games in the tech sector as a product designer and engineer for close to 2 decades. And in the last 10 or so years, I've been researching media behavior and the application of games for learning. So that research has led to the development of Modo News, along with my co-founder, Hecata. We both studied computer science at UC San Diego. About Modo News, the product that we're developing is a simple and free interactive news app that tackles filter bubbles by offering context and different perspectives on today's stories and helping readers converse across viewpoints. Let's see.
Why don't you show it to us, Dan? Let's see this beautiful app that I use every morning when I wake up.
Let's see, let's try sharing. All right.
I'm going to look at the phone. I have an iPhone. This is an iPhone app, right, Dan?
Yeah, it's available on, so this was independently self-funded and developed by me and my friend Nat, and it's currently available on iOS devices on the Apple App Store. You can just search the word Modo, M-O-D-O News, or you can just click on the link from modo.org. I could give you a quick overview. The key thing about our app is that with how we consume the news, we don't have a lot of control over the newsfeed itself, and we wanted to give that control back to the readers. And we leverage technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, natural language processing to help provide context on media behavior. And we present that to users in the form of a clean and simple interface. So with this little screen share, you're not going to be able to see my finger, but you can imagine me just picking on one of the dots. And let's see.
I saw Chicago Tribune, one of my favorites. Yay!
Actually, there's a story on Cassidy Hutchinson with the January 6th.
All right, so tell us what you're doing there.
Yeah, let me just scan the headlines really quick. So imagine my dot, my finger going over the slider dot, and with a given story, we want to expose different perspectives on the same topic. And so as I'm scrolling from the liberal leaning left all the way down to the center to the conservative right, I can get a different story reaction on the same topic. And so when we read the news, it can get very overwhelming. So instead of a topic being assigned to a given source, if you want to see something else, you can slide to it. So that's the core behind this little interface here. If the slider is a little bit too hard because there's a lot of articles too close to each other, you can use your finger and swipe to get a little bit more granular control. Here is the reaction to the recent SCOTUS ruling on abortion rights, and you can sort of see all the different stories pertaining to that. Oh, in this particular case is the most recent G7 and NATO meetings.
Okay.
And
But
then you
tell
can
me
also
about
see,
those marks too. What do the marks mean?
yeah, it's a good question. The little tick mark that you see on the little slider, they represent where the articles are being published. And so when you take a look at a high level view of the tick marks, you can sort of see where the stories are being published along the ideological spectrum. So there is a media term called spiking, where certain stories are just being withheld for various economic or political reasons. And so from time to time, you'll see a story that is just where there's just a, try to see if we can find it here, where it tends to be covered more on one side versus another. In this case, there's a story on Maxwell, which tends to be covered more on the center to center right, and a little less on the left. It's not as extreme, but when you do notice it, it gives you a little bit more insight with the coverage.
So what you're saying, I want to make sure I'm correct in the interpretation. If I'm seeing a lot of marks on one side or the other, it's just naturally being covered more from the right or from the left.
That's correct. So
Okay.
there's a story on Rappler, which is Maria Ressa. I'm not sure what it's been covered in the news with the Philippine government basically trying to repress the
Yeah, she should be sainted. I love this one.
well, yeah, she was a Nobel Prize winner, and as you can see right here with the tick marks,
Nobody on the right.
there's less coverage on the right.
Wow.
Right, I'm just scanning this right now.
God.
This was, and so what we want our readers to do is to sort of ask the questions why, and then it creates dialogue. It encourages them to dive a little bit deeper. What we've been finding over the years is that when it comes down to international stories, it tends to be covered less on the right. When there is a more controversial story on transgender rights, it tends to actually be covered more on the right on the left. And I think the reason why is this more from a stories that are a little bit more critical versus covering the story.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that a lot from politicians to certain topics. The Ukrainian story was covered more on the left. It broke more on the left than to the right.
Okay.
So that's what this tool is about, to give you some context behind what you're reading. And the key thing here too is that we want readers to be able to see the different perspectives, especially on from sources that they normally wouldn't read. Right. Just because you're reading the story doesn't mean you have to agree with it. And our take on it is this, that if readers on both sides of the table is aware of the stories that are being told and not told, it would result in less polarization that's happening with the news and in society today.
Right.
So that's a quick.
Yeah. So let's back up for a moment. So our topic today is on perception. And one of the things my guides really wanted me to be clear about is when I'm talking about perceptions, I'm actually talking about states of being. You can be aware, you can be self-aware, and you can be awakened, which, we're talking peak moments. We're not going to talk about awakening for a while, but really, I think what we're talking about here is increasing awareness and increasing self-awareness, and the internal transformation that can happen from that. When Dan and I talked on the phone yesterday, what really concerned me was the idea of confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is basically the concept that we tend to be attracted to, believe, and take on and add to our belief system things we already agree with, that it's already confirmed as part of our internal landscape. And also at the same time, if something doesn't seem to agree with our internal beliefs or standards or evidence in the past, we ignore the opposite. Confirmation bias is a huge thing to be concerned about. And I wanted Dan to talk about that a little bit more now.
Yeah, so what the work that we're doing, we don't see the bigger issue surrounding misinformation. Misinformation has been around since from the beginning of society. What we're seeing is a bigger problems with the polarization of news, and that comes with we're seeing a bigger trend with it because of social media. Social media is a great platform to express, to share, and to connect. It's also a growing source of information amongst our friends and family. People are reading the news to sort of affirm our own beliefs. Right. And what that's resulting with the political landscape is a greater divide. And so there's a separate discussion as to why echo chambers and affirmations of belief, confirmation bias exists, but we're trying to tackle that by creating a separate news ecosystem so that we allow the social media platforms as a platform for expression, for reactions, to connect, to share. But when it comes down to media literacy, there needs to be a different path versus what we have right now.
Right. And when you talk about echo chambers, I use a similar term called siloing. So if you hear me talk about siloing here on this YouTube channel, this is what Dan's talking about. So let's hear some of the good news. What's going on with the good news in your world? The media literacy. Tell me about that.
So we just launched our app just a couple months ago, fairly new. I've been able to connect with a lot of different researchers and educators. I had a chance to, I was up in Wisconsin just a couple days ago speaking at a conference. The International Media Literacy Research Symposium was in the University of Madison, Wisconsin. And there I was able to connect with a lot of research on just the space of media literacy. And so this term media literacy that is very, relatively speaking, it's a very small term, but it's a very important one. Basically, the term media literacy is how we interpret it is how to teach readers the basics of critical thinking to navigate this this vortex of media and news polarization. And so that is the impetus behind why we created this news app is as a tool. There's other further things that we are developing with it, but yeah, it's a term that I wish policymakers and politicians were more cognizant of and start utilizing to help address a particular problem with what's happening pertaining to this lack of media literacy.
And I understand teachers like using your app.
Yeah, that was not something that we intended. We wanted news readers, but what would that demographic be? So it is in the hands of a lot of educators, not by design. It was just we got a lot of feedback, and that sort of led to the development of the iOS version. I'm personally an Android person, but we found that 9 out of 10 teachers use an iPhone. So we got an iPhone last year, we developed it, and we just released it. We do have plans to develop for the Android. It's just that right now we are still refining the features and listening to our users of issues and listening for suggestions. And we are also validating certain concepts. So we have a lot of prototypes behind the scenes that we're validating, and then we're slowly folding into the product that we update probably every couple weeks.
Okay. And tell me, have these teachers shared some scenarios of how their students use it, or how are they, what's going on there?
So, so on the discussion of what's happening around the world, they're using social media platforms. It's a great platform to see. You mentioned an example. I think it was Suzanne that mentioned an example of educators using TikTok to see reactions of what's happening in Ukraine. It's a great platform for firsthand accounts. But it's just like with a lot of things, you don't want to just focus on just one medium. There's a lot of different mediums that are out there. We have teachers using and librarians and researchers using our tool to simply get a little bit of insight on a given topic. And our tool gives the ability to dump out all the URLs into plain text format. You can text, you can share. We don't try to create any barrier to entry to allow people to share. So if you look into our Twitter feed, we're sharing images of all the different headlines across the spectrum. But that's something that that it's a tool and function that every user can also have for free. So there's a lot of different the particular uses come down to gathering the information and being able to get the sources, and also to be able to dump out a plain text version of the article as well as the headlines.
Yeah. Well, you had talked yesterday with me about, I thought it was a fascinating example about what happened with the Boston Marathon.
Yeah. So my background is, what people are surprised is with my background in video games, why would I be working in this news space? I've been thinking about the problem of news and media literacy for close to 20 years. And the Boston Marathon bombing, that's coming up on, must be close to a decade. It's been 9 years ago. So if what people, it was a tragic event, but the one thing that I really latched onto was there was a kid named
Of course,
Sunil
we're talking about the bomb at the,
Yes,
talking
yeah.
about
So what happened is that it took a while. If you remember, there was a lot of confusion in the first several days. Nobody knew what the motivation and the suspects. And so on Reddit, they were trying to sleuth and determine who the suspects were. And they picked this kid named Sunil Tripathi. He unfortunately died for unrelated reasons to the bombing. He committed suicide and he was found on the river, but he was listed as a suspect from social media. The media companies then latched onto this and listed him as a suspect, and you can imagine the impact it had on his families. And I was able to see firsthand how quickly misinformation can be spread, and how the role that mainstream media has played. And as I'm trying to parse through the news, I realized that the tools that I had in front of me were insufficient, and it just wanted a little bit more control. I wanted more autonomy. RSS is pretty much essentially dead, and so we developed a technology to being able to parse, search, get context. We have a database of journalists that where we can pull up every article that they wrote. We have a search function, and we want to expose that down to the users. But that was the impetus, is that just this desire for more context with what's going on. And
that was a tipping point. Yeah, that's great. Sad, but yeah.
The necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. So great minds.
But it is a niche area, and we knew that going in. I've always grown up being skeptical of everything, And that's a trait that we want to impart on our next generation. Be skeptical, ask the questions.
Right.
For us, the question's more important than the answer itself. And so that's sort of a theme around our Twitter feed, is that we just want people to ask questions. Seek a greater understanding of all the different mediums that are out there, and who's publishing the mediums and why. And if both sides of the political spectrum can be asking the questions to seek to be informed versus to be understood, I think we'd be better off. It's just watching how things are today. Just it's disappointing, and when I have conversations with people who have a different ideological view as mine, we don't get into arguments. I think if anything, there's a greater understanding of both sides.
Right. How do people support you in the work you do?
It's the news app is free. We've been supported by donations, supports from amazing support from friends and families. But yeah, for the most part, we knew that we couldn't just put a subscription as a barrier for people to try things out. We want people to, if we have people just reading to be informed, we know that that's a step in the right direction. So we want to continue fostering that. And so we built the technology to at least be sustainable, but we could always use more resources, and that would go towards additional help. But more importantly, just being able to expand our servers to be able to access more international and local sources. That's really so it's a demonstration of our technology, but we can easily expand that. You can eventually get into other languages. The demonstration of the technology is that we could use artificial intelligence for good, and it could be a benefit to society.
Right. And you have a web address. It's hello at, where does somebody send you information?
Our website is our website is modo.org. Modo is it's a combination of Latin terms modo and modus.
And it means presence, you said, which I love.
I'm sorry?
It means presence.
Yeah, it's basically, it's essentially that we're measuring, it's a terms measurement and what is modern. So we are basically measuring what's the information that's happening right now. And then our email address is open, hello@modo.org, if anybody has questions. And we're on Twitter. We're not big on other social media platforms, so we're just currently on Twitter, which is a great platform for discourse amongst educators and journalists.
Right. So if anybody wants to send some comments or is interested in investing or helping out Dan, hello@modo.org. This is a good time to open up to questions. And I know we have some questions out there, and I can't wait to hear them. While we're waiting for questions, is there anything you want to add, Dan? That I would love to hear. Oh, here we go. That didn't take long. Okay, first question. Have there been other polarizing times in history, and how did they overcome that tension? Well, I would suggest that there's always been polarizing times, but what's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've been talking with a lot of history teachers who are using our app, and I'm trying to learn more about how they're using. I am trying to just think of just more in, just trying to do a deep dive on what's been happening. There's always going to be a polarizing point of view. If with the pandemic, with the Spanish flu, there's a lot of, as you're hearing stories about what has happened well over 100 years, there's a lot of similarities or repetition of the controversies of masking up and social distancing, and due to natural herd immunity, it just naturally phased out over time, and we're seeing that too, right?
Yeah.
I
And
was on a flight.
how it intersects individual rights, right?
Yeah, and what we're seeing right now is with the recent rulings from the Supreme Court, it's a reaction to the things that we've made in the past, and there will be an additional reaction to current events. So pertaining to polarization from a historical perspective, sometimes it's going to go through the ebb and flow, a reaction to the events until there is a balance.
An overreaction and a pendulum swing. Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm reading a lot actually right now about World War II, and it's amazing how much that happened with World War II is not unlike what's happening now with Ukraine. So history repeats itself. We know this. Any other questions here? We got another one. What do you desire? Oh, the one thing. Okay, first let's talk about the one thing. So I have a concept with my inner lighthouse that if you could, with the snap of your fingers, have one thing change in the world of Modo, what would it be?
So one thing in the world of Modo, not in the world itself.
Not in the world itself, no.
Okay. I have a lot of things.
I know you want it. Yeah. We know you want peace on earth. We all do.
Yeah, for Modo is that what I found when talking with users in person is that we are very accessible. We are very open to feedback. Even with the presentation of the app, we come across as this big company, but it's just myself and my friend Nat. So if there was a change, if you're listening and you end up using our app and you enjoy it, please let your friends know about it. And if you have a thought or a problem or an idea, you can reach out to me. I'm very accessible. If you type in my name, you'll probably find me, and you're welcome to connect me on Twitter or on Facebook or LinkedIn, and we can always have a conversation. But yeah, if there was one thing, is do not hesitate in offering feedback, especially both positive and negative. I know people don't like hearing negative news, but I thrive on that. That's how we improve. So that's it. If there was one big change, is that we do need that word of mouth.
Spread the word. Got it. Thank you for that, Dan. I hope we can have you again back on My Inner Lighthouse to find out how you're growing and how you're changing the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Sure. I am going to very quickly share two tools with you that the guides presented to me. Actually, I woke up in a dream to this book, and I haven't read it in a while, but it's a book by Carol Dweck, PhD, called Mindset. She's been 30 years in this field, and she talks throughout this book about two mindsets. One is fixed and one is growth mindset. Believing your qualities are carved into stone, the fixed mindset creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over again. And then she talks about growth mindset, which is the growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic quality are things that you can cultivate through your effort, strategies, and help from others. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents, aptitudes, interests, and temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. So she takes that theory, which has been readily accepted by a lot of psychologists, and applies it to parenting, business, school, and relationships. What the guides told me this morning, Thursdays are my talks with Da Vinci. They had an excellent advice of take a break from media now and again. They literally said, you know, they talk to me a lot in rhyme. So I remember rhyme and alliteration. Take a break and self-regulate. Take a break and self-regulate. We've got a holiday weekend coming up with July 4th. It's summer. Cut the cords and do a media fast. And they suggest this once a month. So that's it. Thank you for joining us for this edition of My Inner Lighthouse. I'm excited to report that our next episode is going to be from Iona, Scotland. And the theme of that is going to be narrative, the power of story. Thanks again. And remember, if you want to see our newsletters, there's an important one coming out about the Second Amendment. You can subscribe at myinnerlighthouse.com for our newsletters. They only come out once a season. Thank you for your time. We love you. And we're so glad you shared your inner lighthouse with all of us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.